Wow, I gotta say that's some brand new opening music. I like that.
That is what we call royalty-free opening music.
Oh, look, and look, we have a guest, I think.
That's right. We do have a guest. We have a very special guest from Detroit here.
Yes.
Let me let him get his camera set before we bring him on live.
Yeah, because otherwise everybody might just get a tad bit nauseous.
Yeah.
And you know,
I just want to say to Susanna here real fast. No, the thumbnail is the opposite of fire. It is ice.
Yes.
That thumbnail is ice.
I must say that is perhaps the best thumbnail you've ever come up with. Yes.
That took me longer than I care to admit.
Well, I kind of like it.
To get done. All right.
Jason looks about ready, I think.
Oh, yeah. I think we're ready. All right. Let us bring on Jason Tameroff from Detroit.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason.
How you guys doing? Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. I love that wallpaper. That's great.
Thank you.
It's
kind of like that's that's awesome. Where'd you find it? That's pretty cool.
The difference between my wallpaper and your wallpaper is you told me where you got yours, and I just stole a swatch and made a virtual background of it.
It's awesome.
And yours is real.
It's really cool. Yeah.
So everyone who has seen this on many of our live streams lately, Jason is where I stole this wallpaper from.
Yeah, I got to take a screenshot of this and send it to my our architect.
Yeah.
That was great. So Jason, for everyone on the stream, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who the heck are you?
Sure. So Jason Tameroff, I'm a vice president at Tameroff Group. So I'm a third generation dealer based out of Metro Detroit. We have two locations selling Honda, Nissan, Acura, and Kia. And then we've got a leasing business that does, unique high-end, we call it boutique leases for high-end vehicles.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. All right. I'm interested now.
Yeah. And then we also have a company that does benchmarking for tier one and OEMs. And so naturally, since so much R&D is right now focused on EVs, we have a lot of EVs in our fleet and a lot of basically one of everything that's out now, we kind of have in our fleet, and I've driven a lot of them, which is good.
Yeah, that's great. And that's, sort of, so everyone knows, we met Jason, he came on and is an upcoming episode with Ray on the Auto Insiders podcast. This is an absolutely fascinating episode. I think everyone's going to love that. But then you sort of delved into the EV aspect of what you do up there when I was like, okay, well, you need to come on and talk about that then, because you have lots of great insight and stuff. And, tell us a little bit about the trial leases and why that happened, because I thought that was fascinating with your salespeople.
Oh yeah, so Nissan, so the Nissan Ariya is a new SUV EV that Nissan launched last year, but that was still kind of in the middle of the pandemic when there were a lot of chip issues and everything. And so Nissan had this great plan for launch. They spent all this money on marketing, launched it, and they made two vehicles. Like 2 cars were in stock for dealers to sell. So they lost all the momentum. And then in the it just was really slow to kind of ramp back up. And so it's very interesting that when we were, back last year when Ford was going through with all their EVs and Farley was talking about how, they need to cut $2,000 out to be competitive with Tesla, I think there's a pendulum and it swung in one direction of the OEMs. And so all the OEMs said, hey, we're going to price these EVs differently. Great news, dealers. you're not going to have to stock these cars. They're going to be made to order. They're going to be shipped to you. Then you're going to deliver them to the customer. You're not going to have to sit on them. You're not going to stock them. And it's going to come one in, one out. And so the Aria launches, they changed the whole pricing structure to dealers. And they've, our oldest cars in hand are EVs. And so the ICE cars, we're turning them, we're selling them, but the EVs are just sitting. And so fortunately, Nissan had a really great idea, which was who better to educate consumers about the switch to EVs and the benefits of EVs than Nissan salesmen themselves. So they came out with a really good, really highly subsidized lease for salesmen, well, really any employee at a Nissan dealership. And so we sold like 3 or 5 of them overnight to those employees. And now they'll be great, spokesmen for the Aria because they'll be experiencing them themselves.
Have they raved about the vehicle since they've gotten them?
I haven't talked specifically. I know they like them.
Okay.
But I think a really big thing is you got to have a charger at your house. And if you don't have a charger at your house, I think it's really difficult. Like, just the infrastructure, I think the range anxiety goes way up when you can't just go home and plug it in at night.
Especially up in the cold weather, right? I mean, are you seeing a lot of that on the issues up where you are? I'm out here in La La Land, so like I don't have those issues, but like I talk to people up in the north all the time, and I'm kind of like, can you plug in at home? Do you do a lot of driving? Because that cold just really kills it.
Wrecks it. So
Yeah.
I drove a Model X. We had one in our fleet. I drove it last winter, and I swear you lose 10% of range. And I have a garage, but I don't have a charger at home. And so I parked in my garage, and I still lost like 10% at night. I was low on range. I went to there's a Tesla supercharger really close to a dealership, plugged it in. I got it up to, I think, 260 miles of range. Over the weekend, drove home. I think I drove like 90 miles of like actual driving. Granted, some of them I was probably going very fast, which I think is a very large drain on the battery. But like I didn't have like the heater on, 80 or anything. Like it wasn't anything egregious, but I drove for 90 miles and I lost 200 miles of range. And so on Monday morning, when I got into the car to drive my kids to school, I'm like, all right, guys, no heat. Like we gotta you guys gotta push it, and we gotta try to make it to work because I gotta get because I had to drive my kids up to school. And then I think I ended up stopping at one of our locations, charged it for a few minutes, and then continued on my journey. So, I mean, I think it's real. The cold weather impact, no question.
And even in a Tesla, so I mean, Teslas have less of that issue than many of the others when I do the research. But even that, so that sounds like a significant loss, and I've heard that from a few other people on that.
But
I mean, you're really losing a lot in that cold. I mean, I do know it gets cold here, not like you're cold, but cold from my battery gets cold, and I have a little snowflake. But if I precondition, I'm fine. If I'm not preconditioning, I lose a lot. Just driving, just even the Sacramento cold weather.
You mean preconditioning before you charge, or just preconditioning before you get in the car?
Before I get in the car. So if I get up in the morning and I use my app and I turn on the heater in the car, which will precondition the battery, then I don't lose nearly as much range. But I do know if you get into it cold and you start driving, the little snowflake that appears up by your battery range, you just lose so much more range, and that's in one of the most efficient cars. So I agree that I'm not sure that EVs are there yet for you folks up in the north.
I think it's very it's challenging for sure. And not to go down too far down a conspiracy theorist, but I do kind of feel like the Tesla range is way more unpredictable than some of the other brands. Like I've driven the Audi, the Porsche, the Ford, and I feel like when you're looking at it, like when I drive my MDX, like, that range in my gas car is fairly consistent, that you've got 100, 110 miles before you need to fill up your gas. Even in like the Mach-E or the Lightning, I feel like it was relatively consistent. But again, when I was in that Tesla and, I lost 200 miles of range in 90 miles of driving, it's felt like in general, based on my experience with other Teslas and with the other OEMs I've driven, it does feel like the Tesla kind of is a little more inaccurate.
Yeah, so I will say I've said on this show many times before, and I'll say it to you because I know you haven't watched all of them. But in a Tesla, you set it to battery percentage because there's no way that range is anywhere near
Got it.
accurate. It is absolutely not accurate. I know there was a lawsuit about they have an algorithm that
Right. That
keeps
would
the
make
percentage
sense.
really high and completely inaccurate, and then as it lowers down it becomes more accurate. And I don't know how much truth there was to that, but I can say I would maybe believe that because I learned really my first week of owning it, I went, okay, so battery percentage then, because that's way more consistent.
Interesting.
And
I didn't know that.
accurate than the mile. The miles are totally inaccurate, and I 100% don't believe Tesla's top specs on their range.
Right.
I don't believe. I love Tesla. I'm not an anti-Tesla guy at all. I love mine, but their top range, no way. Just not.
Right.
No.
Are you suggesting that they're cooking the numbers?
I'm suggesting that there may be an algorithm that that is inaccurate. Yes.
Okay, so they're cooking the numbers, which is fine.
I mean, maybe look. I think there is something to be said for the fact that the EPA allows each OEM to set their own numbers and report their own ranges. Like, I don't like it needs to be standard. If you say a Lucid has 400 miles and a Tesla has 400 miles, it needs to be 400 miles. Like,
it should be apples to apples. Like, there's very strict controls on the miles per gallon for ICE cars.
And EVs just don't have that, and it's not okay. I don't think.
Have Jason? Have you seen an increase in demand in EVs, especially since your Nissan employees, some of them took advantage of that ARIA lease?
Not yet. That was I think they did that in September or October, so it's a little bit too recent for that to really pan out. But again, Detroit, I think, might be a different market, perhaps. Like, there's pockets of the U.S. where EVs are crazy, growing gangbusters. But Michigan and the Midwest is not one of them. Plus, we're not a ZEV state, so we're not a zero emission state. So we actually Kia won't even ship us the plug-in hybrids because they need those cars to go to ZEV states, because if they don't hit those thresholds, the penalties are so steep that it's not worth it. And their production is limited on those, so they won't even send those to non-ZEV states. And consequently, when Honda launches the Prologue that's coming out, I think in the spring, we're going to be the last ones to get it, I believe. Just again, because we're not a ZEV state.
Are you looking forward to the new ZDX?
Yeah, I am actually. I think I've been seeing. I mean, the commercial was all over this weekend on football, which was great to see. I don't know if you guys saw that too, but so I don't know if you knew this, Ray, but the ZDX is based on the Ultium battery by General Motors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is the same platform that the Prologue is as well.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that they're bringing back the ZDX nameplate. Only this time it'll actually have room inside for people.
I love the ZDX. I think the ZDX was the coolest car ever. But you are right. If you were an adult and tried to sit in that back seat, you'd hit your head on the roof every time.
Yeah, somebody described it because I was with Acura at that time, and somebody described getting into the back seat as human origami.
Right.
I mean, it was, and I'm a little guy. I'm like 5'6", and even I couldn't get in and out of that.
You got to kind of go head first.
Yes, it was a great vehicle to drive, though.
It was a lot of fun. It was really
Yes,
cool. That
yes,
was I had one for a minute and that car was great.
yeah,
Whenever we get them on our used car lot, they as trade-ins, they go like they hold their value very well and they go quickly. But it'll be cool that they're bringing it back for that nameplate. I think that'll be really neat.
yeah. I think so as well.
Well, and in the news today, since we are talking to you, Jason, the news gods decided to bless us with, I don't know if you saw this, but Nissan is securing the UK's largest car plant to do 2 new EV models. So they're replacing the Juke and that other one that starts with the Q name.
Cash.
Yes, Kashki.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's maybe how you
And they're going to
pronounce
make them in. You might be right.
But yeah, with a £1 billion British pounds subsidies from the UK government to come in and take over and build 2 new zero emissions EVs there. I thought that was really interesting. That just came out a couple days yesterday.
Are those vehicles that they're going to ship all over the world, or will they be shipped to the United States? Or
well, so the Nissan, a lot of the EV companies are focusing on Europe where demand is higher. Really only California gets close to those numbers. But the US is number 3 when you have California in there. If you take California EVs out of the number, then the US falls to 15.
Wow.
Place in the EV buying. So China is still number 1 by a lot. So my guess is they'll be mainly for China and Europe, but I'm sure we'll see some of them
because they wouldn't qualify for the tax credit either.
Yeah,
if they're imported.
Yeah, correct.
And I think that's going to become more and more important going forward.
I think once the tax credit comes to an upfront, credit, that's when we'll see. And I think that's maybe partial of the EV slowdown is once people started hearing about that, like, okay, well, it's 3 months. Why don't I just wait 3 months and get that off the front of it?
Sure.
That, and of course, the other one is demand isn't necessarily really bad for EVs, but as Ray says every day, where are the affordable ones?
Yeah.
Where are the affordable ones? And that's the other real big obstacle here. And but I think that plays into what I'm thinking is that $7,500 up front off the price of the vehicle will help spur that along rather than, I don't know, they can take it off my taxes later. And
there's no question getting it up front will help, but I think just affordability, lease prices just need to be like, we got to get down to $400, $500 a month. And I think it's a real challenge. There was an article I just read about the, Tesla, I guess. I think it's a relatively known fact. I don't know if you guys discussed on the show that EVs are a little more expensive, I think, to insure just because when you do get into an accident, the severity is way higher than I think ICE. And so consequently, it sounds like Musk came out with his own, because I guess insuring Teslas were really, it was becoming a stumbling block for people to buy their Teslas. And so Musk kind of disrupted the industry, came out with his own insurance. But I think it was Wall Street Journal had an article that just was saying, going through some horror stories of people that, totaled their Tesla got totaled or something. And, it's 3 months. They're still waiting for parts or waiting for a pay up check, and they've got medical bills. And, it's just a challenge sometimes when you run too fast without having all those details.
Well, let me speak directly to that because I have some experience in all of that.
Interesting.
When I went from my Kia Optima to my Model 3. I was with an insurance company, and I asked them for the insurance quote, and it was almost double. It was like 90% higher than what I was paying. And I went, that's absolutely insane. So I shopped around. All the policies were high. And then I asked Tesla, and my insurance went down $20 a month.
Wow.
So I went, yeah, let me get Tesla.
Yeah.
And then I hit a deer.
Okay.
And totaled the car.
Hopefully you were okay.
I was okay. The car actually ended up breaking, which, from what I hear from people who hit deers, may have been the wrong thing to do. I don't know. I have heard from many people who say you should speed up because the deer can go over the car rather than
you broke
trying to break.
The car. I got it.
The car itself broke. Tesla ended up breaking. I didn't see the deer until I was in impact with it. No idea it was there. The car didn't know because it was off the road and then just jumped out, in the middle of the night. But it took me like the first week, extremely frustrating to deal with Tesla. But that was it. It was a week. And then the adjuster went out, totaled it. And
you got a new one.
And then I went back to Kia for a little bit.
Oh, really?
Because I had a Cybertruck on order. So I'm like, it's fine. I'll just get something cheap. And I got one it was $7,000. I got a Kia Optima again. I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. And then Cybertruck just keep getting delayed. Delayed. So I'm just like, I need to get back into a Tesla. Like I'm not disparaging the Kia Optima. I liked that car. It was a nice little car. For $7,000, it was totally worth it. But I really like my Model 3. I like Tesla. It's the car I prefer. So I end up, I'm back in a Tesla now. But so I didn't have that much of a problem. The first week trying to get a hold of anybody was a nightmare. It really was indeed a nightmare. But like I said, my insurance is actually cheaper now with Tesla. So, it's one of those things. If you have to use it, you may not have a great experience. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all part of his plan, I think. And I think Tesla can do things that other OEMs can't do just because their stock price is so insane.
And their model is the Apple model, right?
Yeah.
It's the total integration, all of their products, and you stay into that ecosystem and you'll be fine. If you want to move out of that ecosystem, you might have some issues. And that's, both a benefit and a plus for Apple and for Tesla, I think.
Well, it is interesting because I think some of the traditional OEMs, at least from dealer meetings that I've been to, are picking up on that Tesla is trying to be like Apple with the fully integrated. And so they're definitely trying to move in that direction. But they have so many legacy, apps and portals and this and that. I mean, it is such a huge ship to write to get them to like scrap that other stuff, get it integrated, and make sure that it works and is seamless. So they got a ton of development ahead. But the OEMs, at least that I've been with, have definitely picked up on that, and they're trying to move in that direction for sure.
Can I ask you a silly question about moving forward with EVs in your market? I mean, ultimately, the goal is that EV is the way of the future. And I'm assuming Michigan is not one of the 10 states that are going by 2035. We don't want to see ICE cars sold in the state anymore.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're not. But when you look at the investment required from your various manufacturers, how does that play into you saying, gee, we need to do this, or maybe we need to move more slowly? I mean, how expensive is that?
I mean, I think there's no question, whenever the government kind of forces demands and forces consumer action, I think it doesn't usually end well. And I think I think, from my opinion, is we are moving a little bit too fast. I think the OEMs, and case in point right now is looking at and again, maybe Michigan and Detroit is a little bit different, but for us, my oldest cars on hand, my new cars are my EV cars. My ICE cars, I'm turning them a lot faster and I have less days supply on hand. The EVs, fortunately, I don't have that much, but they are slowly moving. And I think when you look at the headlines from post UAW contract, and I think even throughout that, like GM and Honda dissolved their partnership to create, affordable EVs together. That might have different issues on, and then Ford was threatening, and I think they might have stalled or at least scaled back some of their battery plants. I think
Well,
General
definitely
Motors is
they've
doing the
scaled.
same thing.
Yeah, they've scaled back the battery plant big time.
And
So
the staff that goes with them. Who saw that coming?
Right. So, I mean, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that we are moving too fast, too quickly. And I think to be able to build these batteries at scale is so hard. Tesla spent so many years ramping up, and now they kind of obviously figured it out, and they're producing at huge scale, especially compared to the legacy OEMs. But I think the legacy OEMs will figure it out. But like GM has not, like that Ultium batteries have, like the Hummer EV, they've got two of them, that like the SUV and the truck, and the Cadillac. I forget the name. Lyric? No,
The Lyric,
yes.
Yeah.
Or the Celestique.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the expensive one, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
handmade one.
Yeah.
Like this is GM country in Metro Detroit, and like everyone has an Escalade here, but you don't see any Hummer EVs, very few. And so I just think they're really struggling with trying to get the batteries made and trying to produce these at scale. So it's going to be really, I mean, the government's going to, but then again, I was with one of my OEMs and they said, I don't care if, Republicans take control of all three branches of government and reverse all the EPA rules. I've already made plans 8 years in advance to mothball these ICE factories, build these EVs. Like there's kind of no going back. Like the EVs are coming. They might be able to slow it down a little bit, but I think that's going to impact affordability and it's going to keep them expensive, I think. Because they need scale to get the price down.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think, first off, there's no stopping the train now. The technology's out now. People know it. I agree. I think the biggest obstacle here are the government mandate, quote unquote mandates. They're not actual mandates, but what we perceive as mandates. And I think that's an obstacle, and it is not helping that. Look, you talked about Tesla, how many times did Musk sleep on the floor of the factory because they were almost bankrupt? People forget Tesla's 20 years old. They almost went under many times in that 20 years. And these other OEMs are just starting out. It's hard. It's hard to build EVs. It's hard to ramp that. I think Ford is only just learning. You can't just take your ICE vehicle and turn it into an EV. It's a different process. And you have to sort of wrap your mind around that.
And I think also all the legacy OEMs thought, if you build it, they'll come. And, customers are going to be lining up and it's going to be taking orders. They're not going to stock them. And it's been the complete opposite. So it's going to be really interesting to see, where we go.
Have any of your brands that you represent, have they increased, for instance, on the slower moving EVs, which would pretty much be all the EVs, have they increased like floor plan assistance to help you with those? Or because I mean, that stuff gets expensive to have it sit on your lot.
They haven't yet, but I think some of them are working on trying to rethink how they price some of those, for sure.
It's got to be difficult, especially for you being in the upper Midwest. it just has to be difficult to see this evolution that in your neck of the woods doesn't seem to be going as quickly as in other parts of the woods, especially like the California part of the woods. But yet you as a dealer are expected to make some type of investment in this infrastructure so
Yeah.
that when it does finally kick in Michigan, you'll be ready for it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, we've already invested. I think we've got probably a dozen chargers
Wow.
across our campus, for sure. All in preparation for the new EVs that are coming.
Well,
Yeah.
we hope for your sake they come and they start selling.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Me too. Either that, or hopefully they rework some of the pricing arrangements for sure. Because I mean, at 7% interest, it's really expensive to carry aged units right now, no question, and that's going to start crushing dealers. So it's really interesting because then it's just going to be raced back to the bottom, to the bottom line.
Have you had to come up with special spiffs for salespeople in order to help sell some of those units?
For sure, yeah.
And
It hasn't
not asking you to share your pay plan, but what are some of the like the minimum commissions you would pay a salesperson to sell an EV that's been sitting and
So it
costing you a
depends. I
fortune?
mean, sometimes we'll pay like $250 or $500, spiff to the salesman if they for like an aged unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, customers really don't have a great understanding as to how aged units, how they've cost you money so far just by being there. And then you
Mhm.
have to pay extra to your salespeople to sell them, which only exacerbates the cost of having
problem.
had that piece of inventory to begin with.
No question.
Yeah.
Well, we've been blessed for the last few years that, there's been inventory constraints, supply
Yeah.
constraints, and demand has been through the roof.
Mhm.
So we haven't had to worry about that. But things are very quickly starting to change. And, demand, I think rates are coming, you reach a saturation point where people can afford five,
Mhm.
7, 8, $1,000 a month on a payment. And it's I think repos are going up and it's not good.
How do,
Used car values are going down.
when you see that happening as a dealer, what type of how how can you be proactive to circumvent some of these things moving forward?
I mean, it's really just keeping an eye on getting back to the old way of doing things and just monitoring your leads, making sure you're taking care of the customers and that you're responding to the questions and addressing people's wants and needs in the showroom and kind of getting back to basics, if that makes sense.
It does to you and me. It might not to the customers, but
Yeah, I
or,
mean,
or though the customers might actually approve of that because they're going to see a little more flexibility when it comes to
yeah,
pricing, which is what they were used to prior to the pandemic.
correct. And then it swung, pendulum went the other way, but now it does seem to be going back the other way.
Well, for me, the big piece, and this is what caught me when you were talking about the leasing to your car sales piece. So, is when I go into test drive EVs, and I try to get my butt into every EV I can, because I want to know what the differences are.
Sure.
I like Tesla, but I'm not. If there's somebody who's better and affordable, I want to know. So I try to get my butt in there, and I will tell you, I don't care which dealership I've gone to, I always know more about the EVs than their salespeople
So
do.
that's
Such a huge thing.
totally. That's why I think the Nissan program was really brilliant
Yeah.
because you're right. It can get those salesmen that are the first line of defense and interacting with the customers. They experience it themselves and they know, you know what? Hey, if you get a charger at your home, it's not that bad, or I'm saving this much money on gas, and they can help kind of overcome some of those obstacles and help educate the consumers on what the difference is of going from ICE to EV.
Well, I
For
think
sure.
right now, like my sister came out for a family thing, and she had never even really thought about an EV. She heard the name Tesla, but didn't know anything about it till she got in mine. And then, she was interesting. So I took her around to a whole bunch of the places as someone who knew nothing. And they
Mhm.
couldn't even explain EVs to her. So, I mean, they're not even well trained enough to explain to the curious people who might want to know, like, okay, what is it? And it's such a different vehicle that you really need to get in there. And it's not even I get you may not know as much as me. I do this show every week. We were on 3 days, look,
No, I
I'm
think
I'm
that's
heavy into it, but the curious people, well, what is this? What is an EV?
I think that, but also I think that might go across the board. There's so much information online, and so many people are doing a lot of research online before they come in, that they do sometimes know a lot more than our salesmen, about what packages and this and that. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah,
I will
it's a
say
problem
this
for
though.
us. Yeah.
There's a big portion of online, and you can look through today's chat to see some of it, of just fake news information about EVs that just aren't
Sure.
true, and so they get lost into that too. And I know it's out there. They're reading this stuff, and oh, the EV fires. I'm like, well, they're less likely to catch fire than anything else. Yes, when they do,
It's
good
bad.
luck.
Look out.
But I mean, we're talking a dramatic difference in how likely they are per unit to catch fire. But those things are out there, and they had that, oh, if you get into bumper in an EV, they're going to total the car, this kind of stuff where the media sort of exaggerates stuff. So they do their research, but they don't always necessarily know. And it's incumbent on salespeople to be able to
Yep.
set the not to paint a rosier picture than it is, because I think that's equally as bad. But to set the record straight in some of these cases, and explain to people what's what, and oh, if you
For
don't
sure.
have a garage, you can't have one, which I think in your area is probably true. In my area, I don't have a garage. I can't charge at home, and I have no problems.
Yeah,
But
we
I have
just-
the Tesla network, and B,
Yeah.
I don't have your temperatures. I'm nowhere near that. So I don't have that kind of drain
No,
that you guys do.
I think multifamily, if you live in an apartment or condo complex, I think it's going to be a real challenge to figure out how to get the proper charging. But I think a lot of that technology is changing too. I know that there's a company in the United Kingdom, I think, that's trying to work on, like right now, if you live in an apartment building, say they have 3 chargers, well, only 3 people can park in those spots,
Yep.
and you only can charge 3 cars. This company is trying to work on they like daisy chain it so that you can plug in like 4 cars to one charger, and then there's some algorithm that, or like, I don't know if it's first in first out, but whatever, they say, hey, charge this one first, then this one, then that one. And it seems brilliant, because then you only need 3 chargers and you can
Yep.
charge 12 cars, or whatever the math is. But seems to make sense
That makes
to me.
sense, and that'd be great because you're doing it overnight. So it doesn't
Exactly right.
Yeah,
So
like
if
it
you got
doesn't matter. You
7
don't have
hours
to.
or
And if you're plugging in every night, you have the Model X, if you're plugging in every night,
you're fine.
then you're never at like, you need to charge up 80%. You're charging, 10, 15%. So yeah,
Right.
you could daisy chain that all the way along, no problem.
Jason, can I ask you a silly question in regards to training?
Yeah.
What type of requirements are your manufacturers putting on you for your sales staff, or are they coming in and doing some in-depth training?
So we always have tons of online training for the salesmen. But I think there's a huge difference of, doing training online and on a computer screen versus in person. And I
Mhm.
think back in the day, kind of pre-COVID, the OEMs would come around and do
Yes,
in-person training they would bring,
the vehicle.
the vehicle, and sometimes they bring competitive, and then you can do them and see what the compare. They've really gotten away from that, and I think that's a big mistake. I think that it'll be really great. There's no question putting the cars in the sales consultant's hands is a great way for them to get real world experience, help the consumers, educate the people. You can't make that up with online and web-based training. There's just no way.
No, I mean, even Tesla has their visitors, their experience centers, right? Like, so even companies that sell direct to consumer want somewhere for you to go and look at the vehicle and learn about it and do that. And you absolutely need that. I look at the Lucid and like, look, they had one at the mall. That's how I found out, was able to get into the Lucid, but like they're almost
Did
nowhere.
you drive it?
I did. I ended up driving.
Did you like it?
I really like it. Is it worth the money? No, it's not worth the money, but I love the car.
We had one. It's great. I don't think I drove it long enough to validate if it really got that 500 miles or 450, whatever it is. It's huge, especially compared to the Tesla.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if I had the money between that and the Model S, I'd probably get the Lucid.
If money was an object, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't afford a Model S either. I'm a
Well,
Model 3 guy.
They dropped the price.
Yeah, that's right.
40%.
Yeah, they have.
Let me ask you one more silly question, Jason, if I may. You have had the opportunity to drive many EVs, many more than most people have.
Yeah.
And I know you have Honda, Acura, Nissan, and Kia. But what's been your favorite EV that you've driven so far, and why?
So, a few things. One, I really like the Lightning because I think they did a really good job because everything, if it weren't for the powertrain, if you're an F-150 driver, everything's in the same spot. Like the shift, the gear, the shift lever, everything. Like it goes down so you can extend the center console. Like they did a really good job there. Like it's identical.
Okay.
So I think that's good. But if money weren't the object, I would say the Taycan. And then I will have to say otherwise the EV6, which is the Kia.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like the EV6. I'm with you on that.
It's the most practical. And again, I think the traditional OEMs did a good job of having a better mix of buttons and turn signal stocks. Things are kind of where you're used to them versus the Tesla, especially the Model 3. Everything's on that center screen, and you got to go through 7 menus to turn on the windshield wipers. Right. Okay.
But I hear that.
I
hear that stuff all the time. But I mean, it takes a minute to get used to.
It does.
And as we say here, you have to. Oh no, you have to live with it for a while, to know. And Tesla's probably the biggest one because of what you just said on that stuff. Is when you put everything onto the screen. Now the windshield wipers are first off you can set the click wheel, but also. They're automatic, but it's only one button to get to that screen, but you can get to it several different ways, including to go through 3-4 other different ways to get there. So it becomes like if you're not living with it, if you were renting one, you would probably never get a Tesla because you don't have it long enough to get used to any of that stuff, and it's so different and it's so weird that I think you're right. I think that was the genius of what Ford and even Kia sort of does is they're more looking at that bridge. Okay, let's get you to that place rather than Tesla, who's just like, no, the future's here and this is what we're doing. And you're either going to learn it or not. Yeah.
Yep. That's why I kind of thought a plug-in hybrid would be a better stepping stone to try to get consumers to at least try the plug-in, see how that works, get used to it, and then they can say, you know what, I'm fine with going this far. This helps me, helps the environment, I guess, and whatever. But and then other adopters can say, you know what, I'm ready to go the next step further and do the full EV. It seems like that would be the more logical progression. But again, I think the problem is the government says, hey, it's got to be fully EV.
Yeah, look,
So
I mean, we're a political debate show half the time, so I clearly just say, yeah, the government's the problem here.
mhm,
Tesla struggled and did what they did, but they didn't need mandates to become a popular vehicle. It just wasn't, and I really wish these kind of things
which
weren't
is
in
fine.
place. Yeah, that's the free market needs to take place. These,
Yep.
Those who want to make EVs will make EVs, and they'll have an audience of people who will want to buy them. And
Yep.
those who don't want to, don't, because there's a lot of people who just aren't ready for that. And I do think, we've said it on the show before, I will say the more people's perception of mandates exist, the less they want an EV. They just don't. Americans
Yeah.
don't want to be told what to do, damn
Right.
it. And there's
Yep.
pushback from it. Whereas if you just said, hey, look at this cool new product, people
It's
may
cheap.
go, okay,
Yeah.
let me go do that. And yeah, well, once they become affordable, look, I like the Lucid Gravity. It looks nice. And we need a lot more SUVs out there, as that's what Americans want to buy.
Yep.
But $80,000 ain't gonna cut it.
Right.
That's
I just
not-
ordered an EV9, so we'll see.
I just
think
went
I
to
should
the
get-
EV9 event, and
Oh, really? What'd you
Never
think?
mind.
'Cause I haven't even seen
I
it in
really
person.
like it. I think that's gonna. I think Kia's doing Kia and Hyundai both are doing a bang up job with their EVs. I think they're, I'm not so much, even though I had an Optima, not so much on their regular vehicles that may or may not have fire issues, but and some other things. But their EVs, I really like their EVs. I really like, even we said the EV6.
Yep.
That was one of my favorite non-Tesla, affordable non-Teslas.
Yep.
Really was. Like, I really like the EV6. The EV9, I think it just steps it up a bit
3
more.
rows, I think will be awesome.
I really like that. That's I think is the future that we need to go. And I never really thought it'd be like, hey, look at Kia, look at look at Hyundai, but I am, like, when you're asking me about EVs, like, hey, go check this out. Like,
Yep.
they're good vehicles, and I like them for a lot of the things that you've said too. Is there's more tactile buttons than I, as a Tesla driver, now enjoy. I enjoy not having them, but it makes sense.
Yep.
What they have, and it is intuitive. I will say that. Like, when I go to look for a button, I just sort of reach my hand out, because I've driven ICE vehicles, my whole life, and the button's right where I expect it to be. So Ray could get into an EV6 and know where everything is.
Right.
As opposed to that Tesla where I couldn't figure out where anything was.
Yeah. I would totally get that.
How do you go to drive?
Yeah. Ray hates regenerative braking too. So
I don't hate it. I was getting used to it. The fact that I would stop a quarter mile from the traffic light is, but
Yes.
I made progress. I mean, I got to the point where maybe I was only 600 feet away.
So Justice, do you do the one pedal driving, or?
Yes, and I will never go back. I could not. I had to drive an ICE vehicle 2 weeks ago. Hated it. Absolutely hated 2-pedal driving. Could not.
Now,
like, once you get it, it's so much better.
Do you ever have a passenger in your car?
Yeah.
And how is it for them with the one pedal? Because I feel like I was getting really used to the one pedal, and I kind of really liked it. But like, if my wife was in the car, she's like in a barf bag, head in a barf bag, because it was just so, so jerky. Versus maybe I just wasn't very good at it, but I did get used to it. And I liked the one pedal.
Well, so I didn't have anyone in my Tesla for the first month.
Mm-hmm.
So Ray can be honest with me. He was in the car with me driving. Did you feel the seasickness of?
No,
because I don't think I do that anymore.
That's
whether
good.
I did in the beginning, I don't know, but I never had anyone in my car for a month to get used to that. Because I do know a lot of first-time drivers have that issue where your passengers sort of get seasick. as
Yeah.
you're getting used to
Well, especially
how that
you know,
works.
I was driving the Performance, and I sometimes have a
Oh,
heavy foot, so it's kind of fun to accelerate it.
that'll
Maybe
kill
that's
your
why.
tires, though.
Yeah, and range. Maybe that's why my range was so bad. But
Yeah, well, we were in Detroit for the auto show. I got to tell you, nobody speeds like you guys do.
Yeah, well,
That's crazy over
have-
there.
we don't have traffic like California, so
Yeah,
which
well,
is great.
they locked our we turboed a Model Y, and they did the speed limit to 85 miles an hour. I
And you're
tell
still
you, that
getting
was not
passed.
enough.
Yeah.
I was in the slow lane. It was not enough. I'm like, you guys live here. You should know this needs to go
Yeah,
faster.
That's great.
That was crazy. In
We're very
California, you
fortunate.
can't get to 85 because
No.
there's a car in front of you.
Mhm. Yep.
Can I say something?
It's your lunchtime, but yes.
It's well past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 1:36, man. I gotta eat.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason, for being here on a Black Friday
Of course.
of all things. Really enjoyed the discussion. Love having your thoughts and perspective. Anyone who
Of
would
course.
like to hear more from Jason, his episode of Auto Insiders is going to drop on Christmas Day.
All right. I'm all
It'll
about
be
the
a
holidays.
Christmas miracle. That's
Yeah.
right. So if you want to listen to two Jews talk on Christmas Day,
That would be the day
that
to
would
do
be
it.
No, it's a really great episode. Only the three of us have heard it so far. I
That
will
is
tell you,
correct.
it was fascinating. Love the episode. Love all the information shared. So everyone,
course.
make sure you tune in. Ray Stewart wants to know what you eating.
Well, today, I'm actually going outside of my building, and I'm going to Florida Cold Cuts to get a cheesesteak made with Cooper Sharp American cheese and fried onions and some hot peppers. Because I like it extra gooey with extra cheese.
Sounds amazing.
That does sound good. And
Yeah.
I from being from Philly, I think I would trust your judgment on a good cheesesteak sandwich.
This is my favorite cheesesteak at the Atlantic City area. And there's some good sub shops in the Atlantic City area.
I have one cheesesteak that I can take in all of greater Sacramento area. And they're kind of hit and miss when they're open, but they're great. Otherwise, I get like cheesesteak Charlie's, which is not.
That's not a real.
It's a mall food.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you. That's not a real cheesesteak.
No, I do know. I do know. John wants to know: is there a Saturday show on the on CarEdge tomorrow?
There is tomorrow night. We will be on the main channel at 7 Eastern, and I guess that would be 4 Pacific time. And we hope to. We hope to delve deeply into deal sheets and try and help some customers along the way with understanding where they're at in the process. So that'll be tomorrow night. Yeah.
It is off of Watt Avenue. It's Fat Jerry's.
Not Fat Jerry's.
Yeah, Fat Jerry's. And they're real and they're really good. So here in the area. Jason, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Jason.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
This was great. I really appreciate you being here.
Happy to participate. Very happy holidays to you guys.
Yeah,
see
you too.
Christmas Day.
Yes. We'll see you everyone Christmas Day.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.